I want to share with you a little bit about channeling, mediumship, and channels because they're very, very popular on YouTube. And there's a lot of different things being channeled from supposedly similar entities. Now, I'm Avery. I am a medium, an intuitive, and I have the ability to channel, although I don't necessarily channel other beings intentionally at this time for different reasons. But I want to share something, and I want to encourage you to tune in to see if this resonates with your truth, because whenever something is being channeled or intuitive or psychic or mediumship, there has to be some level of it connecting with an inner truth, right? Deep within your body, deep within your soul, because otherwise we don't know whether that is accurate, whether we're just buying into the energy that could be very, very convincing. So whenever I do a reading, I ask someone, check for your resonance. And if you're not sure, if you're curious or open, leave it and let it come about later if it needs to. But if something is very much a no, and we're softening and we're opening and we're attempting to be open-minded, trust yourself, and leave it for later. Because if something feels really, really off to you and really bad in your body, that might be true. It might be off. It might be bad in your body. But today I want to talk about channels because there's this idea that if someone is channeling a higher being, there can be no errors in it, or if there's any errors in it, none of it's accurate. And neither of those are true from my perspective. A channel is both the filter and the valve, right? So the depth of understanding of the individual doing it is going to limit what can come through, because it is this body's language, my mind's understanding, right? It is going to be an expansion of my human self because that's the intention, but I am the valve. However open I am is how much can come through. But I'm also the filter, meaning my language choice, my understanding of that content, and my immediate second emotional reaction to it matters. Now, many people are in trance state, so a good amount of them is removed. But at the same time, even in that, there are people who are going to show up with some of their understanding. It's why they talk about themselves. That does not make it not real or valid or accurate, but you do need to take that into consideration and ask yourself, what kind of channel do you believe in? What do you want to be listening to, and where does that content come from? Because there's a lot of people channeling a lot of fear and protection and, safety, very, very dualistic things. Those things aren't inherently untrue, but you have to say, okay, what world is that coming from? Is that coming from the world of unity and love and connection of the spirit world, of a higher truth? Or is that very much kind of how humans operate, right? If we removed the filter and the valve, we might be able to trace them back to the same source. It doesn't mean they're not tuning into something. Some people are obviously not. Some people are kind of just tuning into their own paranoia. But it means that we are kind of getting this very human duality filtered fear, good versus bad, very black and white. And there's a lot of that going around, and that doesn't mean none of it is accurate or that they cannot prove things to be true. But we do want to ask ourselves, do I wish to be receiving from the most separate, dualistic, black and white versions of stories, or do I wish and intend, do I desire to receive from a more unified field of love and connectivity? Now, I went to train with the spiritualist church in the UK, and they had a very similar philosophy, that if you're hearing a lot of dark things and, all of this, you are coming from a more separate frequency. And that more often not, when someone really embodies love and ease in themselves, they're not tuning into darkness and war and evil things trying to take you over that you need to protect yourself from. Now, we live in a world where we see some of that stuff. Does that mean none of that is real? It means that that is not going to be how it is perceived from a divine level. It means it's going to be perceived as the fear and the separation that it is. It doesn't mean we're going to completely never talk about difficult or heavy things, quite the opposite. But it is meant to bring you to a lighter place, joining the more spiritual realm. Now, and to validate this, if you look at anybody who's had a near-death experience or an out-of-body experience, they go into a realm where they feel so much more ease, understanding, things make sense. They are lighter about all of the contents of reality. They don't even not necessarily look at reality. They look at their whole lives. They look at the world sometimes, but they don't feel that strange suffering and disconnect and separation from it. So we have to think, we want a channel that is sort of embodying that, because you're going to know that the way that it's being presented is closer to its original source. Now, often people say, I'm tuning into this being and I'm translating it. Everything is a translation of energy. Even you as a human, we're translating energy. Our sight is translating visual frequencies, and our hearing is audible vibrations. All of these things, we're always translating frequencies, and spiritual frequencies are no different, but they are more fine-tuned. And there are not as many collective agreements like we have about the physical world, meaning we are, you see my body as this, and it's an agreement that we kind of have mentally to have a body, right? But there's definitely people, maybe the autistic community, the neurodivergent community, who doesn't see my body exactly how most of us see it. They might see me with colors, they might see a different shape, they might not even notice that, right? And that's really beautiful. We're hearing a lot more about that. In a similar fashion, when tuning into very fine-tuned frequencies like a channel or a medium, there isn't as many set agreements. Now, mediums learn a lot of things about mediumship and what we believe about the spiritual world, and that's going to be your set agreement, but someone could be in a very different place. I've been in very different places in my own life and channeled very different types of information. It doesn't mean they were not accurate, but the logical measurement of accuracy does not apply to the spiritual world. Those are different realms. It doesn't mean it's not true or does not have wisdom, and that you can't have evidential fact, but logic and the things we use, those are measured in a materialistic world, and this is quite literally coming out of the materialistic world into the spiritual world. And so you can't apply the same measures entirely, although there is some logic and material evidence to show that mediumship is real for some and are very accurately doing it. But even still, what they're communicating with can't be bound by materialistic logic. So we have to use our intuitive knowing, our resonance, to know what feels true to us. But we also have to look in, do I feel more afraid when I hear this? And because the world feeds off of fear and separation, often we feel that that is more true because it's creating fear, and fear is how it is, and that's just reality. But that channel is coming and filtering way down into the earth separate plane and into this war upon good and bad, and is not coming from the fact that all things are an aspect of God, but some are standing in the shadow, right? But a shadow in and of itself cannot be grabbed or held. It's not as real as the light. It is an illusion. It is the blocking of light, but it's not real. It's not the real. It's a temporary experience. And so if someone's putting too much into the shadow aspects, I would ask your heart if that's what you most need at this time. Sometimes I think on our journey, it is, because everything's valid at a certain point in time. But I do want to send this out because sometimes people, when we believe in a channel and we've heard some good ones, we start to hear other people and some of it rings true, we feel like we have to believe them, and it can create a lot of fear. Just because someone was receiving some accuracy, it does not mean they're not fracturing the bigger understanding based on their current spiritual development and understanding about reality. So I hope that this is helpful. I'd love to hear your feedback. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear you, share some experiences of your own. I know there's other channels and mediums out there. I know I have a lot of spiritual and intuitive followers, and help support people in understanding how to listen to all of this content that is going to continue to expand as more and more people wake up to our spiritual communication tools. But as we do that, we're babies in this. A lot of us don't have that much experience, so we haven't been trained how to open our heart and remove our barriers necessarily, but our communications are coming online, right? So it's going to happen more and more, and some people are very, very good at presenting whatever's coming to them, and we don't necessarily have anyone to help us ground and soften and open our hearts and speak from a higher love. But that's where we're at in life, and that's okay. That's somehow valid. But I want to encourage you to be an informed listener and an informed creator. So if you have other tips and insight for people, share it below and follow along and subscribe to the channel. I'm Avery. Have a good one.